I hate that part. I think last week I fumbled it really bad. Eddy just kind of tried to talk over me and save me. I just kept drowned.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, what was that?
I brought this just for you because I know you a little bit of when you were covering the Stingers. I used to work in the CBL, so I brought this for you.
Oh, Hamilton Honey Badger. Yo. We should have had a three-peat. Edmonton should have had a three-peat.
Yeah, no moon this year, so that was the big downside for that. But I had a little bit of revenge this year. I worked for them for 2 years when I watched them lose to you guys, and then they ran it back this year. Made it close. I don't know. Did you see that final game?
I did. Yeah. Because they were down in Elam Town. They were down 17 points. I mean, Scarborough was down and came back and made it a really close game.
Yeah, I brought it back. I think it was like 89-88 at one point, and Elam was 90. I was sitting on my couch having a bit of a heart attack because I think they were down. Scarborough was still down by like 15, and Caleb Agata put up a shot, and I called game. And I thought I jinxed it at that point because they just went on like a 15-0 run, and I was a little bit worried. So
I know the OVO guys who own Scarborough after the game, they were pissed. They were mad about that call. They were angry.
Drake got on Instagram and got a little heated about that too. So. Conveniently, he was not there though. So.
I can't. That man. I can't stand him. I think now we just have to spend the entire podcast talking about Shea. Gilgeous-Alexander, who's the best basketball player in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
You know what? Hey, I love that he's one of those NBA guys in Canada who plays for his country gladly. It used to be a thing where guys in Canada didn't play for us. It wasn't a thing.
Yeah, didn't Steve Nash never get capped or something wild?
After there was what I noticed was falling out. He played for them at 94 Worlds and Sydney. Like a weird falling out after 2000 where he flew Canada again. There's like a weird falling out in national for a very long time.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm a Clipper fan, so I was incredibly sad when we traded away Shea. He was very much my favorite player on the team at that point. I love his game. I love his get down. Everything about that kid I think is great. And I think he's going to be pretty special at the end of it all. So, all right. Be fresh. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Forever Mighty podcast. We have a very special guest this evening joining me and Eddy, the one, the only fedored phenom, Avry Lewis McDougall. Did I say that right? Lewis McDougall?
Got that right. Nailed it.
Let's go. Got it in one. Avry, sir, thank you so much for joining us today.
No, of course. It's a pleasure to come on the podcast. I'm happy to be here, boys.
Oh, well, we appreciate you lying to the listeners. That means a lot. So, kind of what kind of started this was we wanted to just kind of talk about the Canadian teams, because I think after the summer let me say it this way. After the way the summer has played out, I think all of the Canadian teams are in these really weird and interesting places. And I think you can kind of look at all of them and be close to sure how competitive they're going to be this year, but have absolutely no idea what they're going to actually look like. And I think that's kind of fascinating. So I guess I will start. Avry, which of the Canadian teams do you think had the most interesting summer?
The most interesting summer, you know what? I'll honestly say I'll go to Calgary. I will say it's the Calgary Flames, because the twists and turns of losing your two big guys. You lost Tkachuk, and you lose Gaudreau. Now, that alone, you would have thought that would have costed Brad Treliving his job. We'd have thought, oh, the Flames are over. The world has ruined them. That's it. But no. Treliving goes out here and gets Uyghur and Huberdeau. When people thought it wasn't going to happen, out of left field, this happens. And you salvage your trajectory of where the Flames are going to be. So I think Calgary will be a team that will contend for a division title. Because outside of the weird round two, Markstrom was a great goaltender before the playoffs hit. Defensively, they are still a strong team. So to me, I think Calgary is a team to watch after their summer. They're going to be a team that will make Battle Alberta fun once again. Also, too, and Nazem Kadri. And Nazem Kadri as well, too, is of Calgary Flame. And he is someone where I still think Kadri is a very valuable guy in your top 6. Will he fall off a bit? Possibly. But he's still going to be a guy that will get you between 60 and 75 points in that lineup, I feel, guys.
Yeah, we just did a deep dive on Calgary for our last episode. Our listeners wrote out on what team we wanted to cover, and it makes sense. Everybody's been kind of looking at what Calgary's done. And it's so weird to say, like, no team I don't think has ever lost their 2 best players coming off of 100-plus point seasons, then somehow maybe got better. Like, they definitely got deeper. Like, I think adding Kadri as a second-line center to go with Lindholm, and then you add Huberdeau to essentially replace what Goodrow did, and then you add Weegar to that blue line. Like, it's just a fascinating offseason to see how it started so bad, and everybody's like, okay, Calgary's going into a rebuild, it's going downhill. And then all of a sudden, they've recovered in a way that, long-term, whatever, these deals will look bad down the road. But right now, like, it's amazing to see they could be a better team than they were last year, and they were pretty damn good last year too.
Yeah, I think the thing with Calgary is, like, I think they have become more of a Daryl Sutter team, just as far as the player profile. And I think you're right, Avery. I think Nazem Kadri is a perfectly viable top 6 guy. I think you should expect his production to drop a little bit. I don't know that he's going to be a point per game guy, but I don't necessarily think that's an issue, because I think his two-way game is strong enough that he gives you a lot of kind of like just like defensive center depth. Because, they've basically got their top 3 centers are all defensive guys now. And, Huberdeau kind of saves them a little bit. I know they were linked with Evan Rodriguez a little bit, and I think Greg Wyshynski talked to Dan Ferris, and that seems to still be on the table as far as a team that might be interested. So, they're in a really interesting spot. And I guess I'll just ask you straight up, like, do you think they are better now than they were when the season ended?
Honestly, wow. It's tough to lose 200-point guys, like you mentioned right there, Stephen, Eddy, but I do think they're a little bit better right now. I do think they're a little bit better than where they were last year, because I'm not sure how Kachuk is going to do in Florida. I'm not sure how Jonathan is going to do in Columbus. They're still going to be great players, though, but I'm not sure they're going to do in their new places. But I think Calgary is going to be a little bit better, because that division they're in, because with the Pacific Division, it's still a division where you're playing with Edmonton, Vegas, Vancouver, Seattle, LA. It's still a very volatile division. So they could do better than they did last year. They might be another year where they're contained for another division title. So we'll gotta see, though, because that division is easily the most volatile in all of hockey, guys.
Yeah, we know there's a few teams that, specifically San Jose, that got a lot worse, but I think, yeah, you're right. Like, every team in that division in some way or another has gotten a little bit better. Seattle was really bad last year, but they've had a great offseason. They've added a bunch of guys to make that team better. The Kings have made some key acquisitions. The Oilers finally got a goaltender, you would think, to actually win them some hockey games. And then the Flames had this whole kind of 180, and even Vancouver added a few depth pieces and kept the core guys. So all of a sudden, we're forgetting the Ducks too, and we're a Ducks podcast. The Ducks got a little bit better from where they were last year as well. So it is a crazy division, because there's a few teams at the top. You could probably put Calgary and Edmonton is still like the top teams in this division, but all those other teams, maybe barring San Jose, are right in this like mix of maybe they could have a really good start and contend for a playoff spot. It's all over the place. So I think volatile is the best way to describe this division. I know a lot of people would say it's a really, really bad division, but with all those teams being so close together in terms of skill level and additions they've made, it makes it for exciting watch to really try and predict who's going to come out of it.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fascinating that the Lehner injury really kind of changes the entire dynamic of the division now, because I think before that you would have said that the 3 playoff spots in the Pacific are pretty much locked up between Calgary, Edmonton, and Vegas. and it's a fight for one or both wildcard spots below that. And that's where you're like, maybe LA, maybe Vancouver, but beyond that, I don't know there's anybody in it. But I think Bruce Cassidy's going to be great in Vegas. I think that team is still good. But excuse me, I'm so sorry. Not having a proven goaltender, I think, is really changes kind of how you have to evaluate them and what you think the expectation is. And I think they're a good team, but anything can happen with goaltending, even if it's a stable situation. So the fact that it's far from stable, it really does make the entire thing kind of up in the air. The one thing that you mentioned earlier that I have a question about, I guess, is because you are in Edmonton?
That's correct, yes.
So, well, I want to talk about the Oilers, but I want to ask you this. What is it like with feeling going into the system where, as Eddy said, the two best teams in the division is the rivalry, is the Battle of Alberta? Like, how, like, I'm a little too young to remember when it like popped off and stuff before. So like, I'm really, really excited, about seeing this and having Kadri come in, even if you did lose Tkachuk, I think helps kind of keep that craziness level up. And I'm really excited about what that kind of series can be.
Well, I'll say first of all, the NHL scheduling only 3 games between these teams next year is baffling. The scheduling is really starting to only play each other 3 times earlier this season. But Kadri is going to be a guy, like, he's going to agitate a lot of guys on that roster in Edmonton. It'll be fun either way, though, but I'm still going to lean Edmonton. I think Edmonton is a bit better team right now. We saw in the playoffs, they can grind you down with their talent. They can outscore their problems. We saw in the postseason last year when Calgary won Game 1 9-6. The presumption was that, Edmonton's going out easily. This is going to be a walk. But Edmonton still has Draisaitl, McDavid, and these other guys. They had Kane, who was big last year for them in the postseason. They had Zach Hyman, who go on Twitter and you'll see Leaf fans are still mad that Hyman is how he Oiler in terms of how he played last year. Like, Edmonton is still going to be a team that's going to give them a fight, and it's going to be a fun atmosphere because, I'm younger too. I'm 29 years old, and the team I grew up watching Edmonton beef with wasn't Calgary. It was Dallas. Kids my age from this region, they had more beef with Dallas and Calgary because in the 90s, Calgary was an awful – they sucked. They were awful. When I was growing up as a kid. They were an awful hockey team. So now you're seeing kids my age get to see what that was like 30 years ago. You're seeing the tension build up again. But it's gonna be fun no matter how many times these teams play in the regular season and the playoffs still. It's going to be a fun rivalry. But I don't think if they play again in the postseason this year, I don't think it'll be a 5-game series. I think this series goes much longer than 5 to play again come summer 2023, guys.
How do you feel about the Jack Campbell signing? Are you high on it? Do you think it's fine? Like, because I like Jack Campbell. I want him to play well.
Just say you don't like it. Just say you don't like it.
I'm just not convinced that was the best move they could have made this summer. And
you know what, guys? Edmonton's a team where they only need okay goaltending to go further. They didn't get okay goaltending from Smith and Koskinen. They got subpar goaltending. And when this is a team that, yes, their top 6 forward core is better, the defense still had holes in it. And when you got a defense that's suspect goaltending, you don't win titles with that. You straight up don't. Jack Campbell, I mean, yes, is it a bit of too much term? Sure. Is it a longer deal than I would like? Sure. But Jack Campbell is a serviceable goaltender. He's okay. He's an upgrade on Mike Smith by far. By far better than Mike Smith, because Mike Smith was the kind of guy where he would have his heaters where he would go 7-0 and have a save percentage of 9-3 whatever, and then a week later have a run where he's 0-9 and he's got a goals against average of 45.3. Like, you couldn't have that. It couldn't go on any further. Like, and it was even Koskinen too. Like, although Koskinen got too much like there was too much bashing of Koskinen that there wasn't on Smith, which I didn't like at all. But I think they're in net. Jack Campbell's upgrade and Stuart Skinner I like a lot. Skinner among the 3 last year was the best goaltender on the team, and he didn't dress in the postseason. Like, he didn't play, which I thought was inexcusable because he was the best goaltender on the roster. And I felt he should have played in the playoffs because Calgary, LA, and Colorado knew what they were getting with Smith and Koskinen. They didn't know what they're going to see in Skinner. I felt from a very long time, put Skinner in, because opposing teams have seen very little of Stuart Skinner. If you lose, at least you try something different. If you win, you got your next dynamo net, I felt.
You know, I like it a lot. I like Stuart Skinner being able to kind of be a backup for a goaltender with the demeanor for Jack Campbell, where he's just, I mean, we all have seen Jack Campbell interviews, and he's just kind of a golden retriever type guy, where I feel like it's great maybe for a young goaltender to be the backup in that situation, that he isn't a guy that is going to be upset if, you know, he has a bad run and a guy comes in and plays 10 games or so, and then Jack Campbell has to win the net back. I think it is a good situation for the Oilers now, just finding some stability. Like, yeah, I'm not a huge Jack Campbell fan. I watched him a lot. I know a lot of Toronto fans in around, you know, my area that loved him or hated him or were in the middle on him. But he proved there that he was a capable NHL goaltender. And like you said, he's significantly better than Mike Smith and even Koskinen to some level as well. So it gives him some stability there. For me, like, I love the Jack Campbell signing. The big thing is bringing Evander Kane back. Like you had briefly mentioned, his postseason for the Oilers was unbelievable. Almost a goal per game, I believe, in the playoffs. And now potentially playing with Connor McDavid. We talked about for how many years the Penguins couldn't find wingers for Sidney Crosby in the early stages of McDavid's era. They can't find wingers for this guy. They can't find guys to play with him. Well, now all of a sudden you could be rolling out with Zach Hyman and Evander Kane for full 82 games to play with Connor McDavid. That's going to be scary. And a full season of both of those guys playing with Connor McDavid, I feel like they fit him so well. And to finally have that established as your core first line, and then you can throw Draisaitl out on the second line with Nugent Hopkins and Kyler Yamamoto, that's scary. I really like that Evander Kane and them being able to find a way to bring him back and sign him long term.
You know, Evander Kane, he's someone who, you know, on the ice, he still has a lot of production. He's still a viable player. Of course, anybody who knows hockey knows the issue with Evander Kane was never on ice production. That was never the issue. Of course, it was off. What happens with him off ice? And I was very vocal in saying that he wasn't someone I would have brought back long term, because we know what happened. Because with Evander Kane as personal life, where there's smoke, there's fire. When an ex-spouse has things to say about you, and there's videos coming out, when different teams have issues about you, like San Jose, Buffalo, Winnipeg, it's not all lies. It's not all false. Where there's smoke, there's fire. So he is the kind of guy in which I would not have committed long term, because he is still a person I move very cautiously on. Yes, he kept his nose clean in Edmonton, but he is still someone who I would not have committed to a long-term deal for. On ice, production-wise, yes, he helps his team. Off ice, he's still not someone who I would have committed long-term to, not me.
No, I think we had that conversation too, right? When Evander Kane was kind of a free agent before coming to Edmonton the first time. Because there's a lot of Ducks fans who were, because I think it was when he was leaving the first time, he was in some trade rumors to go to Anaheim when he was leaving from Winnipeg at the beginning. So that those rumors came back up when the whole San Jose situation went south with a lot of his off-ice issues. And we had that same debate where, you know, on ice, this guy would fit perfect. You'd be able to bring him in. He'd be a goal scorer for this team, and a team that doesn't have a lot of goal scorers. But then where do you draw the line, right, with all this offseason stuff and wanting to associate with a guy like that for long term? And it's tough, and you see it in every sport, and trying to, you know, where do you draw the line and bringing these guys in and giving them a second or third or fourth chance at that point, and how does that affect the locker room? So, like you said, yeah, pure hockey standpoint, it makes sense, but then how much does that affect the locker room, and how much do those off-ice issues hurt you as a team?
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because I think there's almost kind of three categories, right? There's the pure on-ice hockey part. Then you have the off-ice hockey part, which is the locker room, you know, the media, that kind of stuff, how he engages with those people. And then there is his personal life. And I think you said it perfectly. His personal life, where there's smoke, there's fire. I think there are significant questions to be asked about, you know, kind of what we're doing as far as him being in the league, but like it's an imperfect situation with no real answers, and I don't know what to do with that. But I think for me, the thing is, like you said, is the term, because he's been ran out now of 3 different places.
Mm-hmm.
And he has produced in all 3 places. So even when he is playing that prototypical high skill power forward speed game, like I've said this before and it makes me cry every time. Anytime he played the Ducks, he turned Josh Manson into a turnstile at least twice a game. I hate it. I hated it so much because I am a huge Josh Manson fan, and that was just always one of those things where it's like the worst criticisms of Manson is kind of like his mobility and his foot speed and stuff like that is a perfect display right there. And you're like, that's not great. But like it is a serious issue to me that like he can't stay anywhere, even from a hockey perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have, like you said, I would have had a hard time giving him more than 2 years. And even then, that feels a little risky, because if it blows up again, now you're looking to trade him to his 5th team. Like,
exactly,
what are you doing? Like, I don't know how you're supposed to do that. And I think getting him about, what is it, like 5'1", I think that's a solid number from a cap hit perspective, but none of that matters if the whole situation kind of goes up in fire.
Yeah, it's true. And the word came out was that he wanted a longer deal. He wanted a $7 million deal. I think the reason why he's still on that deal at Edmonton is because other teams say, you know what, we're not committing to you. We're not giving you $7 million. We're not giving you that much money, or a 7-year tier. So I think he really came back to, the goalie said, hey, if you feel you're worth that much money, go ahead, test the market, see what you get. I think he came back and realized the most he was going to get was what Edmonton offered him this summer.
Yeah, I can't imagine there was going to be a ton of teams that were willing to, like you said, give him a longer term or even more money that could fit him under and have that risk of something going wrong or these issues resurfacing, and then it be them having to do what San Jose did and try and get out from that cap hit and get out from that contract, deal with all the legal issues and everything that went with that. Edmonton obviously felt somewhat comfortable with what they'd seen to do so, but yeah, you still never know, right? And their hope is that down the road they don't have to deal with it, but you still have all the stuff that has gone on in the past that you still have to bring with you.
Yeah. Evander Kane makes everything fun. He really knows how to just really make the party go. Let's see. Who do I want to? Well, let's go to the other rivalry, because I think the other team that you would point at as far as having the most interesting or crazy summer would be Ottawa, who basically just hit hyperdrive on the rebuild and were like, we're going for it. They didn't think about defense, but they made sure that forward group is drastically improved. Do you think they're a legitimate... let me say it this way. Do you think they finish closer to a wild card spot than first overall?
1,000% I agree with that, Steven. I think right now Ottawa has said, yeah, the rebuild is being accelerated. We're no longer here to compete for a lottery spot. We're not in the debate for Connor Bedard anymore. We're here to try and become a wild card team or win another division. Because when you bring in again Claude Giroux, Alex DeBrincat, you're telling people you're here to contend in the Eastern Conference. I like that, because Ottawa has been a punching bag for a very long time. I want to see Brady Tkachuk win. I like Brady Tkachuk a lot. I think he's a great player, great personality for the league. I mean, the kid went out to Calgary wearing Flames gear to support Matt. Like, how can you not love that?
Yeah,
if you're
100%.
watching the hockey? Like, no, I really think Ottawa is going to be a team that will contend for a wild card spot in the Eastern Conference, and they're going to be a team, if they get in, I think they could be a team that might shock people and possibly win a round, I think, as well, too.
Yeah, they've got a lot of depth, and I mean, obviously adding DeBrincat and Claude Giroux to Batherson, Norris, Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, like automatically that gives you one of the best, most skilled top 6 forwards in that division, let alone the rest of the league. Just with all those guys having 60, 70 point potential as like a bare minimum, that's what they all were on pace for or hit last year. And You think Drake Batherson only played, I think, 46 games. If he plays a full healthy season, if Josh Norris can stay healthy, if all these guys can play at least 70 to 80 games, that's pretty scary. And I'd put their top 6 up with a lot of other teams. And we looked at Toronto, and I think there was a couple Toronto fans or a couple Sens fans who had joked about the fact that the Sens top 6 is better than the Leafs. And I think when you look at all 6 players individually and them as a group, like that's not a out there argument to say that their top 6 is better. We all know Auston Matthews is the best player of that entire bunch, but when you look at them as a whole, and Michael Bunting and Alex Kerfoot are part of that top 6 for Toronto, Ottawa is as a 6-man roster of those forwards. They might have the better bunch. It's going to make, finally, the Battle of Ontario fun to watch again, at least a little bit more competitive than it has been over the last few years. And I think for the first time in a long time, you're going to have the 2 big rivalries in Canada actually mean something for a season rather than one team just kind of bullying another team or another team, Ottawa providing the upset for the Leafs' hopes of making the playoffs or going far in that division. So it'll be nice to see, because for the longest time, like you said, it was Edmonton and Dallas or Toronto and Boston as the rivals, and now you've got the Canadian matchups back and hopefully thriving.
No, I agree more. Yeah, because I remember, Stephen, remember Eddie, the Toronto-Ottawa matchups early 2000s. Like, those were fun to watch. It was fun to watch those 2 teams go back and forth, seeing Ottawa win a few, seeing Toronto win a few. I mean, Toronto was when that produced. There was the Sens scoring on Chris Joseph, and Cujo pulling out McMagoo. That came in that series.
I don't know how you remember stuff like that sometimes, man. Like, that is my brain is.
I'm a weird treasure trove of sports knowledge and sports moments. Where it's like, remember this thing in 2002 where something happened? I'll post it on Twitter randomly. Like,
I respect it, man. I have that, but it's all bad memories of UCLA football from when I was a kid. All right, so me and Eddie talked a little bit about how we wanted to structure this, and we had an idea of like trying to do like a buy or sell kind of thing. So I'll throw the first one of those at you.
Yes.
Buy or sell, Jacob Chychrun is on the Senators by the end of this season.
Ooh, wow. Buy or sell Jacob Chychrun on the Senators? Buy or sell? I'm gonna say buy. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm gonna go buy that one. I really am.
I think so. I think he's the most likely destination is Ottawa right now. I think they're all in. They clearly have gone all in with the trades for DeBrincat and bringing in Talbot and bringing in Giroux. And the one additional piece they need is a defenseman to go with Chabot and Sanderson. And you can say what you want about having your 3 best defensemen all be left-handed, but at the end of the day, they need a quality defenseman to add to that core if they want to do something, if they want to be competitive. And he's really the only name left out. They were in on Uyghur, and he's gone now. And they had the whole connection with him being from Ottawa, and that didn't pan out for them. I think they're desperate to do something. The start of the season, that might be tough, but by the deadline, I'm buying in. I think he's part of the Sens by the deadline.
I know Eddie, and he's still young. He's a 24-year-old D-man, like a young D-man who's strong defensively and can put up points when need be. I mean, come on, that's the kind of guy you would love to see in Ottawa.
Yeah, and he's got a nice contract too. I think he makes 4.4 for the next couple of years, so it's a win-win.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we talked about during the year is when his name came up. Is like his numbers in Arizona this last year took a big drop as far as his production, but his defense improved, and that was on a worse team. So, like, I think there's really very little reason to worry about the production because you can see that all the talent walked out the door. But the fact that even on a really bad team, his defense improved.
Yeah.
I think there is every reason to be all in on him. And I wonder if they would consider moving Sanderson for him. And because now the thing with Sanderson is he's young, and it's weird for Ottawa because, like, other than Giroux, all of their guys are really young, 26 and under, and I think only like 2 of them are. And Sanderson seems to be of a quality that you are willing to wait but you also have Claude Giroux for 3 years. And if you can turn Jake Sanderson into a bona fide top pair defenseman who's going to come in and immediately improve the team in an area that you need to make the most progress in, I think there's something to be said for that. I also think Sanderson is good enough that you can get Arizona to kind of walk back off of this 4 first-round pick thing that they're stuck on, which I get it. I would ask for the moon. Like, I just think at the end of the day, somebody has to give to make a deal. And I think Sanderson is good enough. You add in the fact that Sanderson's American, and now they've already got Logan Cooley. Like, there's a lot there to be, I think, very excited about from an Arizona perspective about making that trade. And I think for Ottawa, he might be, like, other than Charlie McAvoy or something like that. Like, I think Chychrun is who you would move Jake Sanderson for.
Yeah.
Interesting move, but that's interesting.
I could see it. I think if that happens, it's a deadline move, right? Where you've gotten to assess Sanderson for 35, 40, 45 games, see how his progress has come from the NCAA. He didn't get to play last year because of injury, so they haven't been able to see him. Moving him now, I think, is tough because their hopes are that he is going to eventually become, in the near future, someone like Jacob Chychrun, and they'd like to add him, I think, to Chabot and then Chychrun and Sanderson as the top 3. But inevitably, it might come down to, if you want a player like that, you have to give up Sanderson because, yes, you have your 2023 pick to play with. Yeah, you've got the 2024 first, maybe Shane Pinto, some of your other top prospects, Tyler Boucher. But the real piece in Ottawa's system right now is Jake Sanderson. And it could come down to it. I mean, if I'm Arizona, for sure, that's the guy I'm asking for, because you're not getting anybody else on that roster that's close to playing. Guys like Tim Stützle and Brady Tkachuk are going.
Yeah, you're not getting Stützle.
No, not yet.
Yeah, so your next best bet then is Sanderson, and yeah, if you're Ottawa and you're that desperate and you've seen a couple games or hopefully more than a handful of games of Jake Sanderson, you think it's worth it, then that might be the route they go. But it's a tough call because they love Jake Sanderson when they took him over Jamie Drysdale in the draft. Like, they love this kid and they think he's going to be something.
Oh, they
special.
took it. Yeah, I mean, they took him over more than a few guys.
Yeah.
Like, I think it is more than fair to say that they are definitely committed to him. And I think the things about fighting, his speed, his skating, I get it, man. I love it. Like, I just think, it's one of those things that, like, Zach Lowe says when he talks about the NBA he says, if you don't want to trade that guy, that's fine, but that means you don't get the other guy. Like, you have to give to get. And like you said, Sanderson is the guy that if I'm, who is it, Zito Armstrong? I don't know. Whoever's in Phoenix, that's the guy.
Bill Armstrong.
Bill Armstrong. Okay, that's the name you start with. Jake Sanderson plus, and you go from there. And, again, Jacob Chychrun's really young, so I don't even know that it's really taking a significant step back other than you're going to have to extend him a year sooner. But, like, that's not the worst problem to have, is to be like, oh, yeah, we're going to pay this 26-year-old top-pair defenseman more money. Okay, fine. Like, I don't think there's anything there to be afraid of.
And for Arizona, Sanderson's game is still developing. The upside there is tremendous. If you're Arizona, you have a young team in the middle of your rebuild. I mean, of course, this year's going to be another tank year. But in a year or two, or in 3 years, or by the time your new arena is ready for you guys in Tempe, Sanderson could be a bona fide sub defenseman. So I agree that you definitely want to ask for him back. But again, the big thing you guys are mentioning, does Ottawa want to part with him, or is Ottawa going to just say flat out no? But no, I agree. That's the name you do ask for if you do want to make a trade for Chychrun if you're Arizona.
Yeah, it's kind of what they've been planning, and you saw that with the guys they've picked, and Cooley going to college, being a couple years away, Connor Geeky's still not being fully NHL ready. They seem to, and they made a lot of mention of this in the draft. Whoever, I forget the commentators on NHL Network, but that these picks and a lot of what they're doing and guys they're moving out are for when they get out of this arena and can get back to an NHL-sized arena and have guys ready to go. And, the pipe dream for a lot of Arizona fans still is that Austin Matthews is going to find his way out to that way during free agency. So obviously that is something they hope for. But Jake Sanderson fits that timeline, right? Of, he has no NHL games under his belt because of the injuries last year, that it might take him a couple years to get going. And by the time Cooley is there, Geeky's there, the rest of their guys are there, Dylan Genther, they are in a new arena, started to compete. So I mean, listen, I wish Arizona the best. I think the situation they're in, it's funny for everybody to look at the arena that they're playing in, but they are a team that I hope they do well. I have no ill will against the Coyotes, and they seem to finally be moving in the right direction and building the right way, but that would be another step in that direction. And as much as I think Chychrun's a piece to build around, the situation the Coyotes are in right now, they've got to get as much as they can for that kid.
No, I totally agree. And the situation right there, like, I have no desire to pile on them or make fun of them. Like, I've talked to a lot of friends who are down in Arizona, and they're embracing it. Like, they think this is going to be a cool and good thing. I mean, of course, you want to be. Of course, you don't want to be in a 5,000 seat arena. You don't choose to be in there for any other reason, but because you have to be. But they're embracing it, and they think it's going to be a fun thing. They think it's going to be a rowdy arena because I want to go down to a game down there. I think if you pack that place with 2,000 or 3,000 rowdy, it can become a very hostile building very quickly, I think.
Yeah, it's gonna be a tough place to play. Like I don't think many people are traveling to watch the away team down there, so it's gonna be a fairly centric hometown arena, home fan arena, and they're tough, man. Like you talk about in other sports, going to smaller arenas where they're packed to the brim and it's all opposing fans and they're all screaming at you. They feel like you're on top of them. It's going to be a joke for a little bit until it becomes a tough place to play because you're not used to it. It's not a regular NHL arena. You're not in a nice cushy dressing room. Everything is kind of working against you. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Now, Arizona's not a good team, so a lot of things aren't going to go well for them next year, but it might quickly turn into a tough team and not a fun place for a lot of teams to play in.
I mean, look, you put 2,000 to 3,000 ASU fans anywhere, and it's going to be a hostile environment. So, I think that part's a given. But I've gotten into this. I talked to, I guess I should say about this, to Mike Gould on Twitter, who writes about Calgary. He writes about Arizona, and much like you said, Avery, I really don't want to pile on in certain ways, right? Because I do think there are fans there that are really invested in that team, and they have been done a disservice by how sloppy the ownership situation and the managing of that team has been done. What bothers me about the ASU stadium is that at the end of it, there isn't yet a complete concept at the end of it. We're basically giving ourselves 3 years to figure this out as quick as possible. And so for me, I think that's the part of it that, like, I'm just like, just put them in Quebec. What are we doing? Just move them. Like, I don't even care anymore. Move them to Houston, move them to Quebec. I almost want to stop talking about them just because they're not a Canadian team, but they are going to end up in Quebec in the next couple of years. So it actually is fine. But yeah, and Eddy, for the record, you let me know if you want to come down to Arizona when we're in December and you are up to snow in here and Arizona is just nice and 85 degrees. I think we could get some serious snowbirds and get down here and really
listen. My winters
fun.
aren't nearly as bad as what I'm sure Avery's dealing with out in Edmonton. I've seen and heard some stories about the winters out in Alberta and Saskatchewan. They are not fun. Like I think they're bad here, but there's nothing compared to out there.
Edmonton winters are, oh my gosh. There were some days covering the Oilers this year going to Rogers Place. There were some days I'm thinking to myself, like, why am I going? Like, do I have to go cover this game in the middle of minus I'll put in Fahrenheit for Steven, say you'll go to a game where it's 6 degrees Fahrenheit or 5 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like, I don't want to go. I really don't. Because, like, there'll be some days you get into Rogers Place and it'll be like, finally, I'm in just okay heat. My face isn't going to break off because it's so frozen. Like,
Yeah,
Like December and January were sucked.
I've gotten nowhere near it. I lived in Sudbury for 4 years, and I feel like that was the closest I got to it. And I still talked to people I know from out that way, and they're like, "Yeah, that's like half of what we get compared to."
So
It's mental. It's a whole nother world of winter out there. It's insane.
Yeah, I live in LA, so I don't know what any of the stuff you guys are talking about is. I've actually never seen snow in real life. It's a thing that exists in the movies.
You know what?
That's it.
You know what? Eddie and myself, we're going to get you some tickets. You're going to come see a Oilers Ducks game in the middle of December. You can experience it yourself.
Yes. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
Right in the dead of winter, too.
We'll do like We'll do like one of those like Arsenal fan TVs, and we'll just like me swimming through the snow trying to find Edmonton fans. Awesome.
It's one of those ones you'll get out of the cab and you'll want to get into the building as quick as you can. You don't want to stay outside for as longer than you have to.
I might not get out of the cab. I might make the cab drive up to the doors, man. Again, I'm from Southern California. I'm not doing this. Like, that's not. I don't have a heavy jacket. Like, I don't need one. I have
it's
sweaters.
Always funny though. It's always funny meeting. It's funny whenever the beat writers from opposing teams come in. You can always tell they don't travel much to Canada when it's not hockey season, because you can tell there's always the one beat writer who comes from, say, LA or San Jose. Even though they cover hockey, there's one piece of clothing you can tell is not built for a Canadian winter.
Hey man, we just don't have it down here. I'm sure Russo, being in Minnesota, is more than good.
Oh yeah,
there's more than a few people in but like us Sunbelt people, man. Again, like bundling up means putting a blanket over your hooded sweatshirt. Like that's it. Like that's it's like, oh no, it's 60 degrees tonight. Let's get careful.
My heart breaks for you. 60 degrees. Oh, I feel so bad for you, Steve.
You should. You should pity me very much. So I'm kind of torn, but let's do this real quick.
Yes.
Avery, what the fuck is happening in Winnipeg?
I'm trying to understand it, and I still don't. Like, it is easily the most bizarre of all the Canadian teams in the league right now. I don't know what they want to do or what their approach is going to be. Like, for all we know, they're going to shock the world and win the Central somehow. Somehow, it's going to happen.
I mean, look, they still have Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele, Kyle Connor, Pierre-Luc. Like, there is a version where they win every game 3-2, and you're like, okay, they're a competitive team that we kind of have expected them to be, and they have exactly one good defenseman, and we really hope we can have him out there for the right moments. But, like, they finally move on from Paul Maurice, and now they're at Rick Bowness, and I just don't, I don't understand that move, and it feels that Scheifele is getting closer and closer to 30 if he isn't almost already there. And, like, at what point do you have to start looking and moving on? Because, like, I don't know how much longer you can kind of try to have Scheifele, Wheeler, Connor be the core of that team. I mean, I don't know. I really I have so many questions about Winnipeg and no answers.
And ever since they went on that run to Western Final, they've been hitting that brick wall of out in the first round, out in the second round, out in the first round, out in the second round. They keep hitting that brick wall ever since they made it to West Final in 2017. And a great point you mentioned right there. They bring in Rick Bowness, who I don't think is the right coaching hire at all. Like, we saw what happened with him in Dallas. And again, I mean, we got the joke, more recycling, eco-friendly NHL, so eco-friendly, all the recycling, but it's like, he's not the guy at all. Like, that was not the guy whatsoever for the Jets. Like, the moves they've made have been just baffling right there.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, like, I think it was clear in public that they were trying to get Barry Trotz, and it just didn't happen. And then they kind of scrambled, and who else is available? Okay, and they ended up on Rick Bowness. And I feel like the Jets are built a lot similar to the Stars that Bowness was coaching, and it didn't work out that well there either. And they've got a similar type of build of some older players in Scheifele and Wheeler, some young, exciting players like Connor, and Dallas has Robertson. And then I just don't know how it's going to work out. Like I've liked what they've had for a while, and I've always wondered why they haven't been able to get over the hump. Scheifele's a really good player. Wheeler kind of resurged a bit and became an excellent player for them. They've bring in Pierre-Luc Dubois for Patrick Laine, and on paper, like, that worked out, and they became a deeper team. And Kyle Connor, they missed the playoffs last year, and Kyle Connor almost scores 50 and has 93 points. I don't know what they need to do, and then they did nothing this offseason. Cole Perfetti, I guess, is their hopes next year that he's going to jump up and be able to solidify the rest of that top six. But, yeah, they're in such a weird spot because they're one of those teams that you look at and say, yeah, they could miss the playoffs easily next year, or they could just outright win the division because they have a lot of talented players on that team. Yeah. And if everybody buys in and they figure it out, they could win. And, like, I have no idea what's going to go on. We could hit the deadline, and Scheifele, Wheeler, and Pierre-Luc Dubois could be out the door, and same with Hellebuck, or they could be in a playoff spot and adding guys onto the roster. So it's a wild situation for Winnipeg heading into this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I remember being at a Ducks game and watching Scheifele at like 23, 24 just get into it with Gavin. And like, I am a caveman, man. Like, I love it. That shit. Like, that moment, right? Like, Scheifele has Getsy, right? He's a playmaking first center. Mm-hmm. He's got that feistiness to him. He's clearly someone on the ice that kind of commands a little bit of respect and gets other guys to kind of buy in and stuff. Like, you know, I think it's fair to say that somewhere along the way he didn't quite hit the potential you kind of thought maybe he had. But I love Scheifele. I love his build. I love, you know, just the way he kind of goes about it. Like, I love it. And it just feels like it's never worked. Like, it's just never worked. Like, and it's not that they haven't had players, because, like, they still have Nikolai Ehlers, like you said, and they've got Pierre-Luc Dubois and all these guys, and they had Laine. And then it's just like you look at the back end, and it's like, oh, I think Nate Schmidt, defenseman that we've brought in 6 years, and that's just not enough. Like, Nate Schmidt is a perfectly good fourth defenseman. He cannot be the answer to our defense is terrible. And you have Connor Hellebuck. Like, we've seen him be great. You need to do more to support him because the offensive talent is already there. Like, you don't need to score more goals. You need to stop letting so many in. And it just feels like at every turn they've moved away from that, except for with coaching. And I don't know that I'm excited that Rick Bowness is the guy to turn them into the defensive juggernaut that they need to be with, you know, because like you said, like, it's a little similar as far as aging profile, but like, they don't have a Miro Heiskanen. Do they have an Esa Lindell? Like, I know people are down on Lindell, but he's certainly a quality top four defenseman. Like, he plays a physical game. Like, I don't even know if they have that guy. And I just...
They lost Dustin Byfuglien, and they did nothing.
What are they doing?
They did nothing to do anything about it. They didn't have a lot around him before, but the moment Dustin Byfuglien kind of shocked everybody and decided he was done, they've done nothing to bring anybody in to replace that. And they've stopped Gabs, Dylan DeMello, and Nate Schmidt, and a bunch of other guys that they brought in. Tyler Myers didn't really pan out the way that they wanted it to. And it's just been Josh Morrissey and whoever else they can add to that blue line to follow them around right now. And anybody else, like, you would think if a team like Winnipeg should be in on a guy like Jacob Chychrun, they should have been in on a guy like Weegar, Klingberg in free agency. I know defensively he's not that great, but these are the types of guys that they should be going for. When you look at that blue line that they're running out there on a nightly basis, and the rest of the team around it is great, they should be a top team in the Central Division with that top six forward group and Connor Hellebuck in the back, but they just can't seem to figure it out with the style to play, and then the defense core is a mess.
It's totally true. I mean, going back to 2021, the year where they swept Edmonton and they made it to the second round, or the weird year of North Division, like, they should have beat Montreal. The way Hellebuck was playing, he was lights out. He shut down the top guns at Edmonton, and he should have been able to have a better year against Montreal. But again, the team around him struggled against the Habs. The team around him couldn't get it done, and they should have gone to the semifinals and played Vegas in that round. They should have gone further. And again, last year, they missed the playoffs. Like, this is a team in which, if I'm Connor Hellebuck, I'm frustrated right now because we keep hitting this wall over and over again. It's like Groundhog Day for him right now as a Jet.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think for us, in Anaheim, like we've kind of looked and been like, world-class American goaltender is kind of getting sick of this shit where the team in front of him can't play defense. That's unfamiliar. Sure hope nothing like that ever happens here. All right, bye. It's just so unfortunate. Like, all right, I'm going to make a very ridiculous statement, and then you two and your beautiful Maple Leaf hearts can tell me how insane this is.
Uh-oh.
Connor Hellebuck has had the career people pretend Carey Price has had.
Wow. That's tough. That's tough because I think the teams that Carey Price has been on have maybe not been similar to the teams that Connor Hellebuck has been on. I feel like they are, they're close enough that that's not a out there comparison. But Carey Price has carried some of those Habs teams as far as he could, and they just never added anything to that team beyond really him and Subban at times. That could, those early days for Carey Price, that they could really make any effort to go farther than they did. And he's gotten it done throughout his entire career. I mean, internationally he's been excellent. I hate to say it, I can't agree with you, man. I think Carey Price is, I don't want to say miles better than Connor Hellebuck, but I think the career that Carey Price has had, it doesn't stack quite up for Connor Hellebuck yet.
Yeah, I agree, Eddie, that Carey Price has had a much better career. Carey Price is going to go down as an all-time great Habs goaltender. He carried this team through some tough times in the 2000s, the 2010s, and again, of course, his junior career. He had a great career in junior. He had a great career internationally with Team Canada. So I like Hellebuck, but Carey Price, to me, is far better, and he's a much better career. And when he does retire, when he does hang up the pads, I know he's not going to play at all this year, but when Price hangs up the pads, he is going to be a surefire Hall of Fame goaltender in my mind, and he's going to get that 31 retired in Montreal.
Okay, so two things real quick to counter it, because I'm not even sure how much I believe it, but I do think it was an interesting way to look at it. But I'm going to say two things. One, if you're Canadian, your international career doesn't count. You're the best team in the world. You're the best team in the world. There has not been any team that has had anywhere close to the top to bottom talent since the USSR that can approach Canada, you idiot. God, I hate it. I hate myself. So that for me is a tough thing to swallow, especially because, again, Connor Hellebuck, the best years of his career, there really wasn't international play. He didn't get that opportunity to maybe take one of the better American teams that we've seen in a while on a run. So I think that is a semi-fair thing to make. I also, because I think the big difference between Price and Hellebuck is that Price has that heart. Does Hellebuck get a heart for the season he had? What was it, 2019, 20?
Yeah,
I think it was
his Vezina year, he had 44 wins.
His Vezina year. He should have been a Hart finalist. He might have finished in the Hart, I think, conversation that year. But, if he's not in Winnipeg, if he's in Vancouver, if he's in Toronto, he win. They'll just find ways to give him stuff. I just wonder how much of that, because I think Carey Price is great. I don't want to say that Montreal is the reason people think Carey Price is great, because that's unfair. But I do think being in Montreal, having that kind of ravenous, massive market of hockey fans, gives him a little bit of a boost in a way that Hellebuck didn't get. He's not Canadian. He's in one of the smaller Canadian markets. Again, I don't know that I believe what I said, but he's American, so I'm going to ride for him. And I do really think he's going to go down as one of the kind of real missed opportunities in goaltending, because I just feel like, he never had an Andrei Markov. He never had a Shea Weber. you're totally fair that he's probably played with better forwards overall. But, I don't know that the defense has ever been close. Like, he never had a Subban, none of that stuff. So, like,
I will say
we'll stop.
his best year. So if we compile their best seasons, I would say in that top 5 of all the best seasons from Carey Price and all the best seasons from Connor Hellebuyck, 4 of them are for Carey Price and 1 of them are for Connor Hellebuyck. And that's the year that he had 44 wins and won the Vezina. That year that Connor Hellebuyck had that excellent year, the blue line for the Jets consisted of Dustin Byfuglien, Tyler Myers, Josh Morrissey, and Jacob Trouba, as well as Ben Sherratt and Dmitry Kulikov. That is significantly better than what he's run with since and before that.
Yeah, for sure.
If we're going to compare to individual seasons, I think Price has the top 3 seasons. Hellebuck's season probably falls at number 4, and then another season from Price. But Carey Price individually, the seasons he's had, they're just better. And there's that one season that from Hellebuyck, like you said, he probably should have been in the Hart nomination for that year. They were excellent that year. He was on fire that year, but it's Carey Price's show, and Connor Hellebuck's lucky to be there.
I am completely outmatched here by 2 Canadians. Eddy, I don't know how you talk to us ever. Okay, so I really wanted to touch on Winnipeg real quick, but the other thing I want to ask you guys, who is in a better place going forward, Vancouver or Montreal? Because I think you can make a very interesting argument in both directions for both teams being a contender sooner than the other. And I think they both have legitimate defects to the roster or issues with the roster that could be a significant stumbling block for them trying to take that next step.
Ooh. You know what? I will go with Vancouver, honestly. I will also go with the Vancouver Canucks. Are they a perfect team now? No, but under Bruce Boudreau, something about them playing for Bruce Boudreau, he has unlocked the team that found a way to improve. We saw them last year. They improved vastly in the second half of the year when Boudreau came in, and he's probably the one recycled coach who I will accept, because I don't know what it is. Him and young guys, it clicks for some reason. Him and young guys click very well. He adapts to modern hockey. He's a massive wrestling guy, which I love. So I was very big Bruce Boudreau guys. The one old guy coach I will take on my team any day of the week. But watching the fourth quarter of the Canucks last year stepped up in a big way in the second half of the season, and Thatcher Demko is still there. Thatcher Demko is still one of the best goaltenders in that division, and when he's on, he is tough to beat. So I think right now Vancouver is going to be a step ahead of, say, Montreal. I think Vancouver, if they're not going to be a playoff team this year, they dang sure are going to contend for wildcard spot for much of this season.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Vancouver is in a better spot than Montreal with what they have right now. I think the fact that they were able to keep that roster together, keep Besser, Pettersson, JT Miller is still there for at least right now. Quinn Hughes is there. Thatcher Demko seems to be on the up, and I think Vasily Podkolzin is ready for a breakout year. And they still have Höglander there, who he had a tough year, but I think he is hopefully going to have a rebound for them. I think with all the pieces they have now is what Montreal hopes they're going to be in the next 2 to 3 years with Slafkovsky and Suzuki and Caulfield and the rest of those guys. So, yeah, Vancouver for me right now, the only problem for them is their defense beyond Quinn Hughes is not great. You've got Ekman Larson and Tyler Myers, and I think Travis Dermott was just added, but it's not exceptional. So they would need to address there, but just where they are, I have more faith that Vancouver could challenge for a playoff spot in a volatile Pacific Division with the roster they have than Montreal going for a playoff spot in what is still going to be a tough Atlantic Division.
Yeah, I think, Avery, what you said is dead on. I think for me, the 2 things that I trust more than anything about him is American goaltender Thatcher Demko, who is great, and Bruce Boudreau. I really do think that having a team with guys like Pettersson and Höglander and Besser, like those are the Boudreau really seems We love you. It's fine. Okay, he's back. Yeah. So, anyways, we won't talk about why Eddy sucks anymore. But I do think that they have kind of the firepower. I'm not quite as down on Ekman Larson. I'm definitely down on Myers and Pullman and some of those guys, but I really like a lot of the pieces that they have, but I wonder. So I'll do it this way: buy or sell. JT Miller signs an extension with the Canucks.
He's dealt at the deadline. I don't see him staying long term in Vancouver. There's been too much smoke about the idea of him being dealt for him to be a Canuck for much longer. I think he's wearing a New Jersey by the deadline at the latest.
Yeah, I would say so too. I don't know if they can keep him around with everything that's gone on. Like you said, the rumors that have come up around him, the teams that have been interested in him, the fact that they still have to pay some of these guys down the road as well, and sign some extensions to some of the young players. Like, this is a guy that's going to want around $9.5 million. He almost had 100 points last year. If he does it again this year, you know he's going to ask for that money. I don't think Vancouver's the place, or even in a position to give a guy that is as old as he is with the rest of this core that much money. So it'll be tough at the deadline. Like, they're going to be faced with a tough decision because they could be in a pretty good spot. And moving on from a guy who could potentially be your top scorer at the deadline is tough. So it might be one of those situations where you just have to, as much as the return could be amazing for a player like that, you might just have to keep him and go on a run and hope that you can do it. And I mean, it's all gonna come down to where they are in the standings at that point. And if they're fighting for top in the Pacific Division, that's gonna be a tough let go for them to get rid of him.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if they come out of the gate and they're number 2 in the division or number 3 or even almost leading it, that's gonna be really tough to trade that kind of production. But if they're treading water and they're struggling and they are near where San Jose might be, which they won't be, but if they were where San Jose is, then yeah, there's definitely going to be a case where you're going to sell high on JT Miller somewhat to a contender.
I actually feel like a big jerk right now because, like, me and Eddy have talked about this before, and like one of the things that I wish the NHL was better about was not having to win every single personnel transaction. I really kind of hate that everything is asset management now, right? It's like, we have to trade this guy and get a pick. Even if it's a 7th, we have to get a pick, or we got to move on, or we got to lock these guys up. And these teams just kind of rush into these decisions, and we see it in the NFL, we see it in the MLB, we see it in the NBA, that players just hit free agency, and they just go, and meaningful players. So I really don't like that this is where I'm at, but like, to me, JT Miller either has to have an extension signed or they have to move him because the return for him will be significant. And that is the thing for me that, like, that kind of is going to define their season, I think, in a lot of ways, which is what do they do with JT Miller? And, you know, Besser, I think, only signed a 1-year deal. I think Bo Horvat signed a 1-year deal. Like, they've got guys that they're going to have to pay. Like, he and Pettersson, I think, are going to have coming up for extensions not all that long from now. And, like, you know, JT Miller's really good, and he's probably going to command close to, you know, $8-9 million. And, like, I don't know that you can afford that. Like, especially if you can maybe get a high-end defensive prospect, which I don't know that they have in their system right now. I don't know that any of Vancouver's best prospects are defensemen, and, you know, using a just a top line forward to go out and kind of address that, I would be very hard pressed to pass up that opportunity. I think, and I really do think the JT Miller situation is the fundamental question of the Canucks season this year.
Yeah, I would say so. I think it's going to be a tough decision no matter what it comes down to where they are. You look at how they finished the season from Bruce Boudreau, I think there's a lot of optimism that the Vancouver Canucks are going to be a better team. I think when you look at their roster on paper, they should be a better team. They are more likely to be the team they were when Bruce Boudreau came in for that, I think it was 50, 60 games that he was there for. They should be that team. They should be a team who could win 45 games in a season. If everybody stays healthy, they've got a good enough forward core to do that. They added Mikheyev to that roster. We mentioned Podkolzin is potentially having a breakout year, and Thatcher Demko seems like he's on the up and ready to go. For me, again, it just comes down to the blue line, where you've got teams like Calgary who are well-rounded across the entire depth of their roster. You've got Edmonton, who their defense is still questionable, but it is a lot better than what Vancouver has. They've got a couple good young guys in Broberg and Bouchard that are ready to take the next step. They've got Darnell Nurse. Everything, and they finally got a goaltender, so everything's going well for them. The Kings, as much as it pains me to say it, they've made themselves better. Jonathan Quick and Cal Peterson, I think, is still decent for them, and their defense core, as long as Doughty can stay healthy, is better than what Vancouver can run over the boards right now. So that's the big question mark for them, because as much as I love Quinn Hughes, he can't play defense as well as he can put up 60 to 70 points in a season, and they've got nobody else to help him do that. And the big hit, swing and a miss for them was Oliver Ekman-Larsson, and bringing him in, it just did not work out the way they expected it to. And now they're paying this guy $7.5 million to do what he does on a nightly basis. So that's going to be the big question mark for them, is that defense. And if they're in a position where JT Miller can help them address that and get a young defenseman, that's the one move I think you pull the trigger for, with the rest of this core being relatively young.
Okay. I came up with a crazy idea, and so I'm going to, Eddy, you're Vancouver, Avry, you're Calgary, and I want you to tell me which one of you says yes or which one of you says no. Uyghur, Dubé, and a 23-second for JT Miller.
Ooh.
Oh, yes, that's what I was looking for. That's, yes.
Yeah, it's a 2023 second, you said? 2023
second, yeah.
2023 second, that...
It's so tough, because if you're making that trade as Vancouver, you're still in a playoff spot. You would hope so, right? Because Uyghur is still... You're going to make you competitive. Mm-hmm. Dubé adds to the depth, and the second is what it is. It's just a kind of a filler for that piece. I think the trade helps both teams. It for Calgary, it just makes them exceptionally even more deep on offense with some superstar players. I don't even know who shifts down at that point. You could potentially move Lindholm back to the wing if you wanted to do it at that point. So I think for Calgary, if you don't think you could sign Mackenzie Weegar, or you think you're fine without him, which they showed last year they can be defensively fine without Mackenzie Weegar, then I think it's a no-brainer for them. For Vancouver, it's a little bit tougher, but I think Weegar, he adds a lot to that blue line that they don't have already. But yeah, I still, as Vancouver, it's very tough, but I still think you can get more, and I always lean towards the futures and the prospects. When moving a guy of that caliber who can get you as much as he can, I would look younger for a defenseman.
As Calgary, your year isn't going to be broken if you trade away Mackenzie Weegar. If he doesn't want to come back to Calgary, he doesn't sign long term, it is what it is. Miller is, again, a guy who almost had 100 points last year. You add even more offensively to your top 9 unit by bringing him in. And you send a message across the bow to Edmonton, Vegas, anybody else, that we're not messing around. This is our year to go for it to win a championship. That you'll tell the rest of the Western Conference you're going for it for a title if you bring in JT Miller to what you already have offensively. Again, and if we doesn't it's a win-win deal for both sides. If we doesn't want to stay in Calgary long term, all right, it's been a fun 40 games. We're gonna ship you off to Vancouver. Again, you're getting a guy who was almost a 100-point guy, adding it to guys like Huberdeau, Lindholm, Kadri, et cetera, et cetera. Andrew Mangiapane, who had a strong year for Calgary. Like, you're just adding to the Western Conference contender. Like, you're telling the rest of the Western Conference that, the talent's going to run through Calgary this year. So I don't see a losing point much for the Flames if you're Brad Living.
I like it. Because I think, for me, the thing is like JT Miller. Like, if you turn Matthew Tkachuk into Jonathan Huberdeau and JT Miller, you're in a pretty good spot. Now you're looking at a thing where your second line is Mangiapane, Miller, and Kadri. You can even put Miller up on the top line with Lindholm and Huberdeau, and that might be better than the line was last year with Gaudreau and Tkachuk. Like, for Vancouver, it's kind of it kind of shifts you into a more let's be competitive immediately window. But I think they have the personnel to justify that kind of decision, given the number of top six guys that they have that are clearly in their primes right now. So it just kind of came out of nowhere, but I thought that was an interesting swap. All right, let's see. Who haven't we talked about? We talked about all the Canadian teams, I think.
Toronto. Toronto was the one I wanted to get surprising.
That's...
Surprisingly, we haven't talked about Toronto. But
that's right. I have a crazy idea that I haven't even told Eddie about for this. So okay.
TSN the Sportsnet covered the Maple Leafs enough for everybody. But I feel like of all the teams in Canada this year, a lot of teams have gotten better, at least have a direction about them. Ottawa's gotten better. Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver to some extent. They've all gotten better. And Montreal has gotten, worse to some extent, right? Where they have a plan, at least. They've drafted Slafkovsky. They've brought in Kirby Dach. They've brought in who was it? Matheson to let Petrie out for the year. Like, they have a plan to go for Connor Bedard. The Leafs have been this team that everybody knows they need to get better, but they just didn't do it. Like, they somehow got worse. The Murray-Samsonov pairing, for me, I have no idea how they went from that. From Jack Campbell to that.
Is that the worst goaltending tandem for a legitimate contender?
Yeah, unless you want to go Vegas route, but I know Vegas situation is completely different, losing Robin Lehner, right? Where that's tough. Their duo could be worse than Murray and Samsonov, but to go from Freddie Anderson to Jack Campbell to Murray and Samsonov is very difficult. And then for the Leafs to really do nothing else and just actually lose players, it looks like they're going to lose Rasmus Sandin. I don't know how they're going to end up fitting him as an RFA into the fold. And then losing Mikheyev to another team in Canada, to Vancouver, and replacing him with Calle Jarnkrok, who I like a lot, but it's a lateral move at best. They haven't addressed any of their issues. The issues that they had were depth scoring. They couldn't figure out how to score beyond those top two lines. And goaltending wasn't an issue, I guess, when you had Jack Campbell, has now become an issue for them. They didn't add to the defense core in front of them. So, like, the Leafs I love it because, I deal with the Leafs on a regular basis here and Leafs fans. So seeing them struggle a little bit gives me a slight bit of joy. But at some point here, we've got to get on Kyle Dubas for not being able to figure this out, because he's been given a long, long leash so far. And this is a team that year on year, they are a team that everybody says should be competitive, should push for the Stanley Cup, should be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. And they still just can't figure it out. I don't know what's going on here.
No, and there's going to be a time where MLSC says, enough's enough. We can't have these consistent one round and out runs, because, again, they have not made the the second round since 2004. Games were not even on HGTV yet all across North America in 2004. Like, as long as it's been since they won a playoff round, that's inexcusable. And you're right, Eddie. There's going to be a point where, MLSC is going to say, listen, this is your last chance to both Dubas and to Brendan Shanahan. Because after a certain point, what point do you guys start taking some blame? Because you changed coaches before. You've gone through numerous coaching changes. You've changed your roster up. At what point? I say to someone, I love Kyle Dubas. I think he's a great hockey mind. But at a certain point, there comes a limit to when you tolerate consistent losing in the first round over and over again.
Yeah, I mean that was one of my buy or sells that I think you guys both kind of answered it, which is Kyle Dubas is on the hot seat, and I think you're exactly right. And I think, Avery, that you brought up something that I don't think enough people do, which is at what point does this bounce back on Brendan Shanahan? Because he has been there obviously longer than Dubas. He picked Dubas. And I think at this point it's fair to say that moving on from Lamoriello when they did was the correct decision. But there was, I think, was it Mark Hunter was the third guy in that front office that, it was between him and Dubas, and he went with Dubas. And, Dubas has made some good decisions, but I think he's made some questionable ones as well. And, I don't know. Heads have to start rolling because, like you said, like MLSE, they are clearly willing to spend. Like they've had like 3 guys on LTIR, for cap laundering purposes, like every year since like 2010. And I love it. I genuinely love it. I really appreciate that Toronto says, we're Toronto, we have more money than God, and we are going to do this every year. I love it. I think it's awesome. They're going to need to get something back besides selling jerseys. Like, at a certain point, they need that second round. Like you said, they haven't been to the second round since Versus existed in the States. Like, that's insane. That is untenable. And I just, I don't know. I think there needs to be questions asked about the John Tavares deal, which is not to say that he has been unproductive or has underwhelmed, but he is clearly, this is going to sound really stupid, but like he is clearly the piece of that core that doesn't quite fit. He's 31-ish right around now. Marner and Nylander, I think, are both about 25. Matthews is 24. Like, those guys are still there, and they are all going to get extensions soon, and Tavares is still going to be on the books. If they have to move on from one of those guys because they can't, move on from Tavares and they haven't won a cup, like, I don't know that anybody gets to keep their job at that point.
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be in. Like, MLSE is they can be patient, and they've shown with their franchises that they're willing to be patient, but when they are ready to move on, it's quick and swift, and they will pull the trigger and go. And I think when you watch the 2 other major franchises under their leadership, the Toronto Raptors and Toronto FC, and they have plans in place, and things have been moving in the right direction. We obviously, in Toronto, they have Masai Ujiri for the Raptors, and they've moved from a championship team and moved on from Kawhi and are now have a plan in place for what they're going to do there. And MLSE is more than happy to wait through tough times as long as there's a clear plan in place. And Toronto FC is going through the same thing, where they had won champions with Giovinco, and they had a team in place that was good, and then now they went through the struggling period. Then they brought in Lorenzo Insigne, and they brought in Bernardeschi from Juventus. They brought these guys in, and now they're running back through this plan to be competitive again. The Leafs have kind of been in this. We got Matthews, we got Tavares. They were leading up to it, and now all of a sudden it was up, and now it's just kind of sitting stagnant for a while. They can't seem to get over this slump of moving farther, moving past the second round, adding the pieces they need to get there, and eventually that patience is going to wear out. And this kind of feels like the season that could happen, where a lot of the excuses that the Leafs have had have kind of gone out the window. And now all of a sudden it's not a good space for Dubas to be in, to run into what could be a hit or miss season for him, where he could be on the hot seat, and he's running into it with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov as his goaltenders, and nothing else has been added to make this team better. It's a tough gamble to be in, and I don't know if it's going to pay off for
him. All right, so because I'm insane and I have nothing better to spend my time on, I want to jump forward a year. Okay, next summer, Matthews and Nylander, I think. Let me double check that. Yes, Matthews and Nylander will both be up for extensions. If Toronto goes out in the first round again this year, and Dubas is basically told, like, he's got to figure something out now or to lose his job, I want to ask, and this is a very selfish question. Let me be very clear about this. Does Mason McTavish's World Juniors and the leadership, the game, the physicality that he has shown, does he get Anaheim into the room to talk about trading for Austin Matthews? It is not a 1-for-1, even close. You're probably looking at everybody, right? It's McTavish, it's multiple picks, it's probably Lundstrom. You might have, there's Olin Zellweger is probably in that trade, right? Like, there are multiple pieces you have to send. But my question is are we high enough on McTavish right now to think that if this season goes about how we expect it to for him, he can get you into the conversation for Austin Matthews?
Dubas does.
Eddie, wait, I want Avery to go first.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think maybe listen. I think you might get you a meeting, but in terms of a realistic trade or offer, I don't see it happening. I mean, I'll give you one thing. I think California teams in general have a chance. I think LA is still the very top of that. I think Austin Matthews, I think if you were to say where you want to go, I think his list would be, if you did want to leave Toronto, the Kings are still a leader by far. But I think Anaheim gets in the door. Listen, I mean, they might listen to an offer, but being realistic, I don't think that's in play still. I think you listen to a deal, but realistically, I don't think it's happening for Anaheim.
Yeah, I don't think it happens for anybody because I don't think Kyle Dubas survives making that trade. I think, like, and jokingly, I don't think he survives getting out of Toronto actually making that trade, but I don't think he survives the job, keeping his job by making the trade. Like, we all know Kyle Dubas is in this right now to win it with Austin Matthews. Trading Austin Matthews means, like, the pieces you'd mentioned, Steven, you're going for a rebuild at that point, and you're in a completely different direction. I think whether Kyle Dubas was the one to pull that trade, I think immediately after that trade is pulled, he is probably not the GM moving forward for the team. They bring in somebody with a new direction to figure it out. I can't imagine.
Real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I here's the thing because I thought about that, right, is that now you have to tear it down, and I wonder, could they pull it off like the year Boston got McAvoy, where they take a step back for a year, tread water, hope they get a little bit of lottery luck or something, and that 1 year, Mason McTavish takes another big step forward. You've still got Marner in his prime. You might still even have Nylander. Like, you've still got real pieces. At that point, you've got Amarov, and then who's the kid who has the health issues in Toronto? Isn't there a forward?
I think that's Amarov.
Is that Amarov?
Amarov, yeah.
Okay. So, you have a little bit of clarity with that. Hopefully he's able to come back. I agree that it probably doesn't happen. I agree that they laugh at you on the phone and hang up. But I don't think it automatically means it's a new 5-year plan. And that's the one thing I want to say. So I just apologize for interrupting you.
No, it's interesting. I just can't imagine Matthews leaves the Leafs in a trade. It's free agency as a UFA to Arizona or LA or somewhere down this way, closer to his hometown. Otherwise, he's a Leaf for life.
But they can't let him do that, right? They can't let him get to free agency. That's my thing.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I think there's the smallest possibility that he could get traded, not even to Anaheim, just traded. They can't let him leave for nothing. Like, again, I'm going back on what I just said like 10 minutes ago. Like, I hate the asset management thing or how much it's taken over. But, like, it's fucking Austin Matthews. Like, you can't just let him leave.
If you're Dubas, the thing you hope for is a beefed up version of what they did with Matthew Tkachuk, of being able to go out and get pieces to remain competitive. This team has too many pieces right now that are valuable, at least to them, that I don't think you can afford to, go out and even as good as we think Mason McTavish is, to go out and have that as the main piece coming back. You almost need a top player coming back that right now is a top first line player, and then an extra piece to come in the door to still go along with Tavares and Marner and Nylander. And maybe it's a guy that comes in that doesn't make $11 million, so you have some cap flexibility. That's the only way I see them getting it done. But you're right, they are going to be faced with a decision into next season when Matthews will be a pending UFA at the end of not this year but next year, that they're going to have to come to a decision on what the plan is for him, because he will be heading into unrestricted free agency. And from all indications, it seems like he wants to stay in Toronto, but 2 years of failure, how much does that weigh into his decision of staying with the Toronto Maple Leafs if the Coyotes take steps forward, if teams that he is interested in going to, Anaheim, LA, start to, their young core started to come up and they look like they're going to be in a competitive position while also having the cap space to give him the money that he wants. So, I mean, listen, I would not envy the position that Kyle Dubas is going to have to be in. This is a guy who is easily one of the top 3 players in the league, and to think that you could potentially lose this guy at heading into his prime, that's not a fun situation to be in. They hoped they would be in a completely different scenario here where they were competing for Stanley Cups, and this guy would easily put pen to paper on a new deal and it'd be written off already.
Now, to Eddie's point, though, Matthews does love Toronto. Like, if it was his choice, realistically, he probably is going to resign, because you see him on and off the ice. He loves Toronto. He's at so many events. He's all about the city. He has embraced being a Torontonian through and through. So I think the smart money is him finding a way somehow to stay and be much like Connor, like David had said before. I want to win in Edmonton. I think Matthews built the same way of saying, I'm not going to leave if I ever do leave until I win here in Toronto first, because he loves that market and that playing in that roster so much.
Yeah, I mean, they will shoot Nylander into the sun before they let Matthews walk for nothing. So, like, I am totally there with you guys. I just think, somebody kind of raised this point regarding Toronto, that, like, anytime there's a middling, a middle 6 player on their roster that, like, oh, it's coming up. Like, it's a year ahead of time. This is the conversation we're having. Austin Matthews, like, it's Austin Matthews. Like, I don't know what else to say. That conversation could start this year. And it wouldn't be insane, because it's 2 years left. He's going to be 26, I think, at the end of this deal. You know what I mean? So, like, I just think it could get really weird in Toronto. And if they don't make a real run this postseason, I think everything's on the table. Like, I don't know what it is, but I don't think anybody at that point is safe. And I just, again, like, MLSE at a certain point, they're going to start really making people putting their feet to the fire and say, look, you got to start doing this. We're paying you an awful lot of money to win us a championship that we haven't got close to. And that's a problem. So, I want to do a couple calls, and then we're going to bother you about the Ducks for a couple minutes, and then we'll let you get out of here, sir. So, okay, here's my first buy or sell. The 2023 NHL MVP plays their home games in Canada. Oh, Avery, you hit mute, bud.
There we go. Now we're good. Can you hear me now? Okay, yeah. I muted my mic for a second. Okay, 2023 MVP. Ooh, I'm going to buy, because if Draisaitl or McDavid are healthy, it's tough to say it's not going to be one of them, or even Austin Matthews once again. I think it's really a 3-horse race once again between Matthews, McDavid, and Draisaitl. I mean, it's going to be tough to knock either one of those guys off that pedestal of being the MVP.
Yeah, I feel like the answer should be buy. I want to be different and say sell. And my only choice, if I was to say sell, would probably be Cale Makar, of him just having he had an exceptional season last year, don't get me wrong, but to make up for the loss of Nazem Kadri and them somehow needing to add some offense that he could just explode for 90 to 100 points, I think that's in the realm of possibility for him. But I mean, you still got to sit by, because the three most likely candidates are McDavid, Draisaitl, and Austin Matthews, and they all play on Canadian teams. So there's a real good likelihood that one of those guys are going to walk away with it. And I mean, even some other good players. You look at Marner, you could look at Kyle Connor and guys like that, and still see Huberdeau, and say that those guys could walk away with it as well, right? And the top goals.
Huberdeau's the dark horse for me, because with the summer Calgary had, like, obviously all the light is on him, and if he comes in and they win the division again, they don't miss a beat, like, he's going to get a lot of love, if nothing else, because Alan Walsh is going to make sure he gets a lot of love. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I do think it's a buy. I think it's insane that you would rather take the 7 teams over the 25 teams. But the 3 guys that we're talking about, plus the couple of dark horses, like, there's very few guys who can. What I mean, Minnesota's going to take a step back. I'm not sure what Kaprizov is going to do. You've got Robo, you've got, somebody in LA maybe can go crazy. Florida, Tampa Bay, like Boston, like, there's plenty of teams that are going to be good, that are going to be real competitors, and that are going to have a chance. But I don't know if any of them really have anybody that gets close in a game-breaking sense to the big 3, which, it's Draisaitl, McDavid, and Matthews. Okay. Buy or sell. Jay Woodcroft enters the season as a top 5 candidate for the Jack Adams.
I'll say if the team gets up to a hard start and he gets his full 82 game run with the Oilers, and they have another strong year where they are finishing either second or win a division, I definitely think he's in strong consideration if he doesn't win it entirely. Because we saw what happened last year when the Oilers, like, before Jay Woodcroft was hired, the Oilers were literally dead in the water. Like, that era of Dave Tippett, they were free-falling incredibly hard. Dave Tippett, in the last month of Dave Tippett's tenure, he won 2 games in a month. 2 games a month as the Oilers head coach. Like, he saved this team from being in a lottery spot. He saved Ken Holland's job. Woodcroft, he saved Holland's job, because I don't think Holland would have been here and missed the playoffs last year. And you saw Woodcroft, depth guys, top 6 guys said he brought in a system that we like, we understand. He gets that level of buy-in for a full year, and Edmonton is again a 100-point team that's threatening to win the division. I think it's a foregone conclusion that he's contending for Jack Adams this year.
Yeah, I buy that too. I think he enters the season for me as a top 5 candidate when you look at the rest of the teams. I mean, Daryl Sutter will be in that discussion again because he won it last year. But the big question is, can he do it with a completely different team essentially this year? So he'll be in that mix. I don't think anybody in the Pacific Division right off the bat hops in that discussion. I think maybe in the Central, of anybody, you could put Bednar in the top 5 again just because of that team and what they're going to do. And then the only other guys I'd maybe put in that mix are Brind'Amour out in Carolina. God, why am I forgetting the name out in the Rangers? Gallant with the Rangers.
Gallant, yeah.
Yeah, he could be in that mix again. So I'd put maybe those guys as my top 5, but I think the way Woodcroft ended that season, he was like 26-9 or something like that, like above above 700 win percentage. So yeah, he definitely goes into my top 5 to enter the season. They have the potential to win 50 plus games, and if you do that, you're definitely in the nomination, in the running.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned Daryl Sutter, and like one of the things that like I feel like we've seen pretty consistently is that like nobody wins 2 years in a row, but nobody loses their 2 best players in one summer and still remains that level of a contender. So like I am actually kind of stunned that the situation in Calgary didn't strike me as more of the potential for Daryl Sutter, who I really do think might be the best coach in the league. Like, I really think he might be the best coach in the league. Like, it's probably between him, Cooper, and Brindamore for me at this point. I think those are like three just remarkably good coaches. But I completely agree with you guys that Woodcroft absolutely enters this season as a heavy favorite just because he got the buy-in from the team. Avery, what you said is dead on. Like, McDavid could not be more effusive in his endorsement and his praise of Woodcroft. You know, I think it was Friedman on one of the 32 Thoughts Now podcasts where he basically said Connor McDavid like strongly endorsed Jay Woodcroft for that final job, even during the playoffs in that run. So I definitely think that is a very fun kind of thing to watch is how he does in Edmonton this year. Okay, the next buy or sell. The Battle of Ontario has surpassed the Battle of Alberta as must-see TV.
Oh, man. That's a sell for me going into the season, because I think from what we saw recently from Calgary and Edmonton, it's still up there. It has the potential this year to be a lot better than Battle of Ontario does, but I can't quite say it's past it as must see TV just yet, because Calgary and Edmonton are going to be two of the best teams in the Western Conference, let alone the Pacific Division. So not quite, but it's getting there.
I agree with Eddie. Yeah, it could get there eventually, but the must-watch battle is still Edmonton-Calgary. And, of course, on top of the fact that Edmonton and Calgary is going to have a lot of great players involved, there's already that pre-simmered beef. Like, you need that animosity there. We haven't had that in a long time with Ottawa and Toronto. You have that now again with Edmonton and Calgary. You've got the back and forths between players. You got the on-ice stuff. Like, you got the playoff series that these teams had for the first time in 30 years. Like, there's already that beef that's back brewing. It's at full tilt right now. So I'm going to sell on Ottawa, Toronto being the more must-watch matchup than Edmonton, Calgary as well.
Yeah, I have a hard time arguing with you guys there. The only thing I would say, as far as your point, Avery, about the beef is the one thing that we have seen in sports that can manufacture tension or beef between teams that quickly is a young up-and-coming team with a serious chip on their shoulder. And I don't know that anybody enters this season with a bigger chip on their shoulder than Ottawa, because the entire summer has been, damn, Ottawa got good, but they're still not good enough. They are going to be intent on proving people wrong. And there is an opportunity for that to really accelerate the animosity in that rivalry. But at this point, like you both said, it's entirely conjecture and projection. So, okay, one more, couple more by ourselves. Okay, the Canucks benefit from Vegas's goalie issues and secure a wild card spot. My goodness, Steven.
Huh. You know, wow. I am going to. Wow, this is a tough one. I like both teams. I like both Vegas and Vancouver into this season. So I'm going to say buy with an asterisk. Unless Vegas goes out and gets another goaltender. As it stands right now, I will buy on Vancouver doing that. But if Vegas goes out and say they bring in a James Reimer, then I'm going to sell.
Where you at, Ed?
Yeah, I'm gonna buy. I think Vancouver was it Vancouver overcoming or? Yeah, Canucks benefit.
Yeah,
okay, So I buy. I think the Canucks secure the wild spot over Vegas. I think Vegas going in, if I'm going to judge them on having Thompson, Brossoit, and now Aiden Hill versus what Vancouver has. Now the rest, like Vegas's defense I like a lot better. Their forward group I could put on par. Maybe the superstar level of Eichel and Stone I put above what Vancouver has. But I think they could just edge them out across an entire season. It's going to be close. Like, they only finished 2 points behind Vegas, and Vegas had the bad year, and Vancouver had the good second half, so it's going to be close. But I think there's enough there, and I like enough of what I've seen that I think Vancouver can go out and add to their defense in an easier way than maybe Vegas could go out and add and fix their goaltending situation across an entire season. So I would give the slight edge and buy Vancouver getting that wild card spot over Vegas.
Yeah, I think again, like Bruce Boudreau, like I don't think he's missed the playoff in his first full season anywhere. And that's remarkable. Like, he came into Anaheim halfway through when they fired Carlisle the first time, and like, even though they fell short, that team played hard. That team pushed hard down the stretch to really kind of at least, make themselves be able to like go to sleep at night over the summer, not being like, oh yeah, we completely mailed it in. Like, they really pushed. And if there's someone who can do it, I do think Boudreau is in a position to get the most out of that team. The problem with that is Bruce Cassidy is the coach in Vegas, and Bruce Cassidy's really good. And, again, like, it kind of comes down to, can Boudreau get 6 defensemen to play well enough to not completely screw it, versus can Bruce Cassidy get 1 goalie to play well enough to not completely screw it? And I don't know that I want either of those jobs. They sound miserable. But man, that's a really tough one for me. I really do. All right, so that wasn't controversial enough. Let's get back to something we kind of talked about at the beginning of this. Buy or sell. The Ottawa Senators top 6 is better than the Toronto Maple Leafs top 6.
Ooh, wow.
We kind of danced around it a little bit at the beginning, saying, so I'm going to make you guys take a stand here. I'm an American, so I don't have an opinion. I don't know anything about hockey, obviously. So I'm just going to make you two go out on a limb on this one, and I'll just hang out over here.
I will say Ottawa's is improved, but I'm going to sell on it being better than Toronto's. I still think you cannot say a top 6 with guys like Marner and Nylander. Matthews is worse than Ottawa's. Ottawa's is getting there, but it is not better than Toronto's. I'm selling on that one.
This one is tough for me, because I think
do it, you coward.
I think when you talk about pure individual star power, Matthews and Marner are the 2 best players of any of their top 6, and Tavares is very good shout for even being the 3rd best player of them. I'm going to buy that Ottawa's top 6 is better than Toronto's, and it's very, very close. But I think when you round out the entire top 6, the big sticking point for me is individual players. I like a lot more of what Ottawa has versus Kerfoot and Bunting. Bunting is great. I like him. I don't know how great he is without Matthews and Marner, because we haven't really seen him without Matthews and Marner. And then Alexander Kerfoot is okay, but he's putting up 51 points because he's playing with Tavares and Nylander. I really like what Ottawa has done, and when you look at it's Tkachuk, it's Norris, it's Giroux, DeBrincat, Tim Stützle, who put up last year on a not-so-great Ottawa team 58 points in 79 games, and Batherson, who was almost at a point per game. All 6 of these guys could put up 60 to 70 points next year, whereas the only guys in Toronto I'm confident for sure are going to do that are Matthews and Marner. And it's, Nylander and Tavares will be in and around that, and Kerfoot and Bunting will be below that. So it's a slim margin, but in terms of overall depth, I'm buying the Sens. I'm on the Sens train that their top 6 is better than the Leafs. I know that's going to make a lot of Leafs fans upset, and that's been a huge debate this summer, but I'll buy the hype. I'll take it.
Okay. All right, guys. The last buy or sell for the Canadian teams. And then, Avery, we're going to ask you a couple of questions about the Ducks. And like I said, we'll let you get out of here and stop taking up so much of your time. Buy or sell, Connor Hellebuyck finishes the season on the Jets.
You know what? I'm going to buy. I'm gonna buy now. I don't know if the Jets are gonna commit to moving him. I think he's gonna still be a part of that team that's gonna try and again. We mentioned earlier. We don't know what the hell the Jets are yet. Like we don't know exactly. But I can see them keeping him and trying to make a push in the Central Division again under bonuses here. So I think next year, 2023, 2024 possibly, but this year I think they're gonna try and make like one final push with him in net to contend for a division title, I think, in that Central.
Yeah, I buy that he's going to finish the season with the Jets too. You've got this year and next year under contract for Connor Hellebuyck. If you want to make that move, I make that move outside of the season every time. I don't try and move him at the deadline. You're not going to get what you want at that point. And there is a good shot that they could make the playoffs. We talked about them being a weird team. You know, the rest, as much as we talked about the Pacific Division, a lot of those teams getting better. I feel like as good as Colorado is, they've gotten a little bit worse because they haven't replaced Nazem Kadri. Minnesota's gotten worse. St. Louis is in a tough position as well to go back and repeat. Dallas and Nashville, are they going to be better? Are they going to be the same? None of these teams have really significantly improved. And then the two worst teams in the division have now become the worst teams in the league in Chicago and Arizona. So you're going to pick up points in those places as well. So there's a good chance Winnipeg makes a lot of improvement this year and fights for one of those, either the wild card spots or that third spot, even the second spot in that division behind Colorado. So I think if he's moved, it's outside the season. So I buy him being a Jet for the entire year.
Yeah, I think that's a draft that's a draft move kind of thing. But man, that would be fun if he could find his way somewhere else. All right, Toronto, we're gonna make you trade for Connor Hellebuyck. So then Connor Hellebuyck automatically becomes a Hall of Famer. I don't make the rules. So. We really want to talk to you about the Canadian things, but then kind of today was a little bit weird in Anaheim where they added a hockey player to their team. So I guess my question for you, Avery, is where are you on the Ducks? In any way that you want to take that. The Pat Verbeek era, the team on its way up, or you hate the jerseys, anything. Just where in general are you with the Ducks from your perspective?
Well, I will say first of all, the jerseys is historically one of the best of all time, divisional ones, one of the best hockey has had to offer. And I'll say second of all, it's funny because I'll give you a brief story. I did not know that in hockey lore, I did not know that my old Boston radio, Jason Strudwick, his cousins are Niedermeyers. I did not know that. So for months on end, Jason was telling me, my cousin calling in the show today. I think he was lying. I did not know he was being dead serious about the fact that Niedermeyer and the Strudwicks are cousins for months on end. I did not know until Scott called into the show one day. He's like, "Oh, dang, you were lying. You actually are his cousin." I thought he was joking. I did not know he actually were his actual cousins. Which, on my part, is embarrassing being someone who works in hockey. So, but in terms of the Ducks, honestly, I think the Ducks right now their future is I love Trevor Zegras, I love Troy Terry. I think these guys hockey should embrace them entirely. Trevor Zegras, anybody who got mad at him for the whole the Michigan thing and his skill thing, you're stuck in the past. You're a caveman. This is how we grow sport. So I love the Ducks for being progressive with that. Good Morning America featured Trevor Zegras. How many times do you see hockey, no matter what it is, on Good Morning America? So I love that. But I think the Ducks are going to be a team where, yes, they're a younger team, but I think they're going to be a contender in that Western Conference in a couple of years. I don't think they're there yet. They showed us last year flashes of them possibly being a Western Conference contender. They fell off as the year went on, but they have pieces in place to eventually be that wild card team in the West. I want them to be a good team in that conference that can threaten the Vegases, Edmonton, Calgary. That's a young dynamic team that if they go to a long playoff run, it's good for the game to have a young team like that that's dynamic in the Western Conference going deep into postseason, I feel.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue with you there. For me, one of the things that has been interesting about going into this next season is like watching Anaheim fans kind of try to figure out where the team is. Eddy, you can speak to this as well. Like, it feels like Anaheim fans are kind of constantly fighting themselves over, well, shit, we got these guys. Like, this is going to be great. And then also, like, we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Everybody wait. And there's this very real tension inside of the fan base as far as, like, where this team should be this year. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, there's a realistic scenario where they could be a lot better than they look, or they could be a lot worse. You're in this middle ground where you're waiting for kids and prospects to take steps forward, and there's a good chance Zegras and Terry come out and do either exactly what they did or significantly better and get into that 80 to 90 point territory. Mason McTavish comes into this league and challenges for the Calder Trophy. And you add, John Klingberg to that back end. You've got Dmitry Kulikov in this year. John Gibson has a resurgence back to when he was challenging for the Vezina Trophy. And then all of a sudden, this is a team that if Vancouver falls off, if Vegas can't figure out their situation, okay, maybe they sneak in for a wild card spot. You've got that little bit of optimism that, okay, there's like enough here to say that that's possible if all these things pan out. And then there's another side of the fan base is like, yeah, you know what, like, we lost Lindholm, we lost Manson, we lost Raquel, and we kind of sort of replaced that, but it's not significantly better, and we were one of the worst teams in the league last year, so we're going to go for Connor Bedard this year. So it's a weird split. A lot of that has to do with a new general manager and a new direction, but it's still fun, right? It's still a fun place to be in because we've been in this, like, in the dirt for so long, and then now Trevor Zegras comes out, and Mason McTavish has an excellent year, and Troy Terry pops off, and it's a lot of fun to watch that. I think even for us fans this year, with the Ducks being bad, there were still a lot of fun moments. And obviously Trevor Zegras is at the center of most of those, so you have to give him a lot of credit for that. But it was fun to watch despite them being bad. So there's a lot of optimism that they could be better. But I think there's some realists. I know, Steven, you're part of that thinks that or assumes that things will likely be the same as it was last year.
Yeah, I this is one of those things for me where it's hard for me to kind of separate like my personal bias versus me trying to be like objective and thoughtful. But like, I am, Eddy, you know this, and Avery, you have the unfortunate happenstance of walking into this at the moment. But like, I love Hampus Lindholm and Josh Manson. Like, I truly think that is maybe the best pair of shutdown defensemen Anaheim has ever had. I think at one point they were one of the best shutdown pairs in the entire league. I think the team deteriorated around them in a way that really hindered their ability to be successful. And I really worry about this team and their ability to keep pucks out of their own end, because I think, as much as I'm trying to fight it, it really does feel like this is the year where it is Gibby's make or break. Like, he's had it like 3 up and 3 down. And so now at this point, it's like you're either the guy from the first 3 or the guy from the second 3, and you've got to choose like immediately. And if he's not the guy from the first 3, I don't know that a defense of where the top 4 is Cam Fowler, John Klingberg, Jamie Drysdale, and now Dmitry Kulikov. Like, I don't know how many teams they're stopping from scoring. And it just feels to me like they're they're a year or two behind kind of what we're talking about with Ottawa, where they have these incredibly talented young forwards and then a hole at the back. That's just like, technically we have 6 defensemen. They're there. You can look at them. They're on the bench. Like, I don't know how realistic some of this, push for a wild card spot is, but I also don't know that it's fair to think, well, they're probably one of the bottom 5 teams in the league, given who we know some of these bottom 5 teams are going to be. Like, the bottom 3 spots feel almost locked up to me in Chicago, Arizona, and Montreal. Like, I feel like those should be the 3 worst teams in the league at the end of the year. So I don't know.
I think they're in a similar spot when you look at teams that have improved that were bad last year. I feel like they're in the same mix as a Detroit or as an Ottawa, in the sense that they were bad last year. They've added, they should be better if a lot of things go right, but there's a good chance that they could still regress or be the same as last year. And there's always a few of those teams in the mix. I feel like Columbus could be one of those teams this year again with adding Johnny Gaudreau. New Jersey, I think people expect to be better than they were last year. Seattle as well. But the realistic scenario is some of those teams will, and some of those teams will produce better. Some of them will be the same as last year. Some of them will be worse. That's just the case with a lot of these teams because so many things have to go right. In the same cases with the Ducks. So many things and so many stars have to align for them to be a playoff team that it can only happen for 1, maybe 2 teams in this league to really jump. And we see that every year. One team surprises everybody and either makes the playoffs or gets really close to it when we thought they were going to be bad, and one team pulls a Philadelphia where people thought they were going to be good and they finish in the bottom 5 of the league and end up getting the 5th overall pick. So you see that every year, and it's kind of fun to be in that position as the Ducks and kind of not know and have a little bit of optimism that they could be good.
Yeah, again, Avery, we really just cannot tell you how much we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us and talking about this with us. It's been a genuine pleasure. I am sure that we will bother you soon about coming back on, and then you can feel free to completely ignore my DMs. It's totally fine. I would do it to me too if I could. Please tell the people where they can find you, because I'm trying to imagine anybody doesn't want to fucking read your stuff or listen to your stuff or anything that you do, because you're wonderful and I adore you, and I would love for everybody to support you. Avery, I think you're on mute again, bud.
There we go. I'm a fan of the background. I didn't want the fan to get in the shots. Okay, so I'll say it again. So you can find all my work on you can find my work on Twitter at Avry at AVRY. You'll find all my links there to when I post stuff for Yahoo, Hockey News, 3 Down Nation, my podcast, Avery Sports Show, and Brian Avery Hour. I'm perpetually online talking hockey, basketball, football, NFL Blitz being censored, that kind of good stuff.
Oh my God. I still don't understand why you would bring that game back if you're not just going to let it be an absolute disaster. It was the best part of the game.
Like I said, Steven, on Twitter, like I said, when you boot the game up, put a disclaimer on there.
Yep.
From the NFL, NFLPA, 1UP, Football Greats Alliance, this game was presented how it was 25 years ago. These are not the values we hold today. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Yeah, don't do an elbow drop on the opposing quarterback 5 seconds after the whistle. I think we can agree with that.
Don't Hulk Hogan leg drop someone after a sack, That's dangerous.
Oh my goodness. I really am just repeating myself with this, but again, thank you so much, Avery. Eddy, whatever, I don't care.
You see me enough.
Everybody listen. Yeah, exactly. Can't get away from you. Everybody listening, we are still going to continue to do the 3 other division previews with the deep dives. I think the poll for which Eastern Conference division you guys are going to get to pick from is ended today, so I'll probably put the next bit of that up tomorrow. And thank you, everybody, for staying with us this offseason, and hopefully you enjoy the handful of stuff we're putting out there for you guys. So thank you very much.